Welcome back to The Explainer. Today we're unpacking some absolutely groundbreaking research by psychologist Susan Nolen-Hoeksema from her book, Women Who Think Too Much. Now hey, don't let that title fool you. Even though her research highlights how this disproportionately affects women, the psychological traps we're going to talk about today, they can ensnare literally anyone. Our goal here is to figure out exactly how our own thoughts can become our own worst enemy, and more importantly, how we can finally break free.
So let me ask you a question, and be really honest with yourself here. Do you ever just lie awake in bed, staring blankly at the ceiling, trapped in this endless, exhausting loop of replaying a single, kind of awkward conversation from earlier in the day? You know the exact feeling I'm talking about, right? Turning some throwaway comment over and over and over in your mind until you're absolutely convinced you've ruined a friendship or completely jeopardized your career? Well, if that sounds painfully familiar, believe me, you are absolutely not alone.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is how perfectly this doodle visualizes the chaotic, totally exhausting reality of an overactive brain. Just look at all that heavy mental clutter. Clocks, laptops, chores, those tangled, messy scribbles of anxiety. It's a massive mental load. It captures that exact feeling of having like 100 tabs open in your brain all at once, and they're all frozen and they're just draining your emotional battery down to zero.
But don't worry, because I promise you, we aren't just going to sit here and validate your stress today. No way. We're going to give you a clear, structured roadmap to some real psychological relief. Here's our agenda. 1. The overthinking trap. 2. The yeast effect. 3. 3 types of overthinking. 4. Health consequences. 5. The self-assessment quiz. And 6. Breaking the loop.
All right, Section 1, the overthinking trap. Before we can actually defeat this monster, we need to clearly define the monster we're dealing with.
Dr. Nolen-Hoeksema defines overthinking as the propensity to obsessively replay negative thoughts, experiences, and feelings for hours. It acts as a toxic poison that completely paralyzes problem solving. It's so crucial to understand that this isn't just, deep thinking. It's not some quirky personality trait or a sign that you've got superior emotional intelligence. When it crosses the line into overthinking, it's literally a toxic cycle that creates these massive, overwhelming problems in our minds that don't even exist in reality.
So the crucial point is understanding the exact psychological trap we're actually in, because people get this confused a lot. Look at anxiety versus overthinking. Anxiety is all about the future. It's the what if. Like, what if I completely fail this exam tomorrow? Overthinking, on the other hand, is laser-focused on the past and this totally toxic certainty about the present. It's not what if I fail, it's I have already ruined everything, and here are all my past mistakes to prove it. It's also really different from OCD, which usually focuses on external things, like germs or checking locks. Overthinking is an internal, emotional swamp.
Moving on to Section 2, the yeast effect. The author uses this brilliant metaphor to explain exactly how a tiny fleeting worry transforms into a massive mental breakdown.
Let's walk through this anecdote about Franny. She's a highly successful landscaper from the research. Franny has a client meeting that goes, okay, not perfect, just okay. Step 1, she starts thinking, I wasn't persuasive enough with the client. That right there, that's the raw dough. But then the yeast kicks in. Step 2, the thought expands. I always let people walk all over me, I'm just too weak. And boom, before she even knows what hit her, the yeast has made the dough explode into step 3. My boyfriend doesn't actually love me, my mother probably has leukemia, and my son is drinking way too much. Talk about a leap, right? Within minutes, one tiny unrelated professional doubt doubles in size and completely infects entirely unrelated areas of her life. That's the devastating power of the yeast effect.
Okay, Section 3, 3 types of overthinking. This toxic habit doesn't actually look the same for everyone. It manifests in 3 distinct ways. As we go through this, I really want to challenge you to identify which one is your personal default style.
Type 1 is aggressive. This focuses entirely on wrongs you've suffered. The result? Vengeance and impulsivity. For example, if an aggressive overthinker gets rejected from university, instead of moving on, they'll obsess over how unfair it was and impulsively decide they need to sue the school. Type 2 is autonomous. This focuses on seeking deep causes. It starts innocently enough trying to figure out why you feel sad, but quickly results in inventing fake root problems, like, I'm sad today. Maybe it's because I actually hate my career and need to quit my job immediately. Finally, we have chaotic. This is when a dozen totally unconnected worries hit you all at the same time. The result here is an action. It's complete freezing paralysis. You literally just shut down. Section 4, health consequences.
It's so easy to brush overthinking off as just a bad habit, but we need to get serious for a second. The science proves this is incredibly physically damaging to us.
And this brilliantly illustrates that exact point. Let's look at this timeline from a 1989 study. Pre-1989, Dr. Nolen-Hoeksema had Stanford students take a baseline psychology survey measuring their tendency to overthink. Well, purely by chance, in October 1989, a massive 7.1 magnitude earthquake struck San Francisco, right in the middle of her research. 10 days later, she did an initial trauma assessment. 7 weeks later, she followed up again. The data was crystal clear. The students who were identified as overthinkers before the quake showed significantly longer-lasting PTSD and depression than the non-overthinkers, regardless of how much actual danger they were in during the event.
To really ground that data in reality, listen to this quote from Jill, one of those Stanford students. She said, "I have the impression of constantly reliving the moment the earth started to shake. I stood there screaming, she could have been killed, and I didn't move." Jill was totally physically safe, but her overthinking trapped her in this horrible cycle of severe survivor's guilt. It forced her to relive the trauma over and over again, literally preventing her brain from healing.
Section 5. The Self-Assessment Quiz. So, are you trapped? I want you to literally hold up your hand right now and mentally check off a finger for how many of these next points apply to you when you're feeling upset.
When you're upset or having a bad day, do you often think about how lonely you feel? Do you focus on your physical fatigue, your lack of motivation? Do you ask yourself, why can't I just snap out of this? Do you find yourself replaying a recent event you really wish went better? Or do you just start listing all your past faults and errors? Look, if you answered often to most of these, you are officially trapped in the overthinking cycle.
Which brings us to Section 6, breaking the loop. Okay, let's dive into this because this is the absolute most important part of the explainer. How do we actually escape?
The research gives us a clear 3-step process. Look at Jenny and Sean. Jenny was furious at her boyfriend Sean after a massive argument. She tossed and turned all night, building up all these aggressive overthoughts. But the next morning, she did step 1, loosen the grip. She literally physically distracted herself by going for a run along the river to break that chemical loop of anger in her brain. Once calm, she moved to step 2, step out of the swamp. Instead of obsessing over who was right, she gained a high-level perspective. She loved Sean and wanted to save things. Finally, step 3, avoid future traps. She focused on a positive resolution, calling him with a totally clear mind to talk calmly instead of burning the whole relationship to the ground.
Taking control of your mental loops isn't easy, but as we've seen today, it's absolutely crucial for your health, your career, and your relationships. So I'm going to leave you with this one empowering, provocative question. What is the one toxic thought in your mind today that you need to stop watering? Find it, physically distract yourself, step out of the swamp, and take your life back. Thanks so much for joining me on The Explainer, and I will catch you next time.